Hey everybody, it's Tim from the Old Man and Bitter Girl Show, and we are in town for the Victoria, Texas Independent Film Festival, and we're sitting with Skizz from Hit and Stay, uh, directed the movie. And real quickly, why don't you give us a quick synopsis of what the movie is about for people who don't know?
Hit and Stay is a feature-length documentary. I co-directed it with Joe Trapea. It's about middle-aged clergy who protested the Vietnam War by breaking in the draft boards, destroying the draft files, and then waiting around to be arrested. And that inspired a major change in the anti-war movement from that point on.
Yeah, I actually took some time out to watch the film. It was a very good film. What made you guys decide to go about and do a documentary on this particular subject?
Well, Joe and I are both from Baltimore, and growing up in Baltimore, if you are in any way radical, you know about the Catonsville Nine. They're legendary. And Joe was writing a paper for school on the Catonsville Nine, and I made the suggestion that when you go to interview these people, don't just take an audio recorder, take a video camera, because that footage will become very valuable to some documentary filmmaker down the road. And that suggestion meant that Joe roped me into going with him on his interviews with my video camera. And then when he started looking at the footage, he decided he wanted to be the filmmaker to make that documentary. And then he talked me into partnering with him. So it all kind of grew out of Joe writing a paper for school.
And it's very interesting because that was, I think you guys mentioned it was kind of the first protest of its time to do something like that. They did something very radical and illegal, like they broke into something and they pulled these draft cards out and then they set them on fire, in which in the movie they said that was the only copy. So once those were destroyed, it was hard for, well, the government didn't know they couldn't draft you. And so it was a very powerful thing, but at the same time it was very peaceful because that they stayed, they waited to be arrested and to make their point.
Yeah, they knew it would get a lot of attention. That's the one thing. It really wasn't the first, but it was the first one to get the attention. And they really knew how to work the attention machine. They had people in place. As soon as they did the action, they had people ready with packets to drop in a mailbox to go to the press that had photos and statements and everything. They had people ready to make phone calls to news. They actually had the news there. Luckily we have this footage in the film of them burning these draft cards because they knew enough to call the local news and say, we're going to do something, come film it. We're not going to tell you what it is, but come film it. So yeah, they really knew what they were doing, and it was a huge story. I mean, I was 2 when it happened, so I don't really remember it, but from what I know, it was like the front page news story. It was top of the hour on Walter Cronkite when it happened, and then again when the trial happened. So they got double the mileage, when the trial happened.
Now, how do you think that events like that has affected things today and today's anti-war movements and protests?
That's why I keep trying to think of a good answer to that question because in the film we sort of tie it to what's happened since. I guess the most recent thing would be the whole Occupy movement. But what these people did in the 60s and early 70s today would be considered terrorism.
Right.
So it's a whole, like, you can't do these things, even though there are people in the film that are still out there doing things like breaking on the military bases and hammering bombs with hammers or pouring blood on them or whatever. It doesn't get the same amount of attention. It's not as shocking to the public now, unfortunately. But I do think that had things like the Catonsville Nine in the 60s never happened, who knows what the anti-war movement would be like now. This was one of the things I like about the story that we tell in the film is this was the moment when the country stopped seeing the anti-war movement as college-age people protesting the draft and said, wait, older, respectable people are against the war too. Maybe we should be paying more attention. And if anything, that's the best thing that the Catonsville Nine did.
And I think they even mentioned that, like, when they mentioned a news story where the news reporter kind of just said it like no big deal, and then later on it became a big deal because, yeah, you're right. It's not just, like, even today you'll see, like, people talk about the Occupy movement as trust fund kids or, people who have time to sit around versus people who, I mean, these were clergy people, respected, and I think they even said for the Nine, they wanted them to be middle class and respectable people so that they would get noticed.
A lot of them were veterans too,
Right.
which was another thing. Like, these were people that have already been in war, you know. So for them to be anti-war, that says something.
Yeah.
Like, they know what they're talking about. They're not just trying to get out of it, because they were, you know, none of them were young enough to be drafted at that point. They'd already served.
So I know you're screening here at the Victoria, Texas Independent Film Festival. I know that you screened at RxSM in Austin last month. Where else has the film been?
We premiered about a little over a year ago at the Chicago Underground Film Festival, where we won the Audience Award.
Cool.
We played at Maryland Film Festival. We played at the Sidewalk Moving Picture Film Festival in Birmingham, Alabama, where we won the Best Documentary Feature.
Cool.
We played at the Waterfront Film Festival. I can't remember them all. There have been over a dozen now. We still have a few more coming up. We're currently talking with a distributor. As I'm here,
Nice.
I'm getting the email updates with revised contracts.
Nice.
And so it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. You said you won the Audience Award. What's the response been like on this film?
It's been great. I'll admit, it's kind of a hard film to get people interested in. Like,
Right.
I think people read the description, they see the trailer, and they think that looks really interesting. But getting them to actually come to the screenings isn't always easy, because, you know, it's Vietnam. It's not really a sexy subject matter.
Yeah.
For the kind of people that go to film festivals today. But the people who do show up, I've been very happy that I haven't seen many walkouts, and a lot of people that are there stick around for the Q&A and have great questions, and they come up afterwards and thank us for having made this film, for somebody finally compiling this whole story into one easy,
Right.
you know, the whole project.
Yeah. So is there some place where maybe our viewers can find your film or keep up with updates?
Our Facebook page, which, you know, I think it's just facebook.com/hitandstay. I could be wrong though, but go to our website, hitandstay.com. I'm
Okay.
sure we have a link to the Facebook page there. And like I said, we're talking to a distributor now. There's a good chance that it will be released in the fall.
Awesome.
Fingers crossed.
Right. Well, Skizz, thank you for taking the time to talk with us. Guys, the movie's Hit and Stay. It's here at the Victoria, Texas Independent Film Festival, so be sure to check it out.
Thanks for having me.